Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Somewhere between science and superstition.
We have such sights to show you.
Strange Eons. Welcome to Strange Eons Radio. That's Eric Morgood over there.
Hello.
That's Vanessa Williams over there.
Good morning.
I'm Kelly Young. Hey, guys. Week 2 of protests going on. I had one just outside my window yesterday. Very loud, but very peaceful. There was no looting or anything going on. They were just making a statement, and everybody here in my little town seemed to be okay with it.
Yeah, I've noticed protests. Most areas I've gone to in Seattle are either protest ready or protest concurrent, protest in the middle of. My dentist was completely boarded up. They're downtown Kirkland, and they were ordered by the city to do so. And then I was driving through Columbia City, which is a little suburb out here in Seattle, basically. And I had to go around because I realized I was like, man, traffic kind of slowed down. And I looked ahead and there were people just sitting in the street.
Oh, no.
Like a bunch of people just sat down. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go around. Don't mind me.
Issaquah's have had some too. And we're about 14 miles outside of Seattle, and had a group. They haven't been walking, but they've been planted out by the police station and the courtroom for about 5 days in a row. And it's about 60, 70 people, but they're just there with signs.
It seems like they've gotten chiller. It seems like it started off really rough those first couple days, and now everybody's just doing these nice peaceful protests.
Well, I think that, it's coming out. It's pretty clear to see that the protesters are one group of people, and the people who are taking advantage of a protest going on to loot and cause damage, that's a different group of people.
Yes.
Not to go on a segue at all, but my aunt works at Nordstrom Rack in downtown Seattle. And so she's worked there for a long time, and she was watching the news of all the looting, and she said that she saw like 3 or 4 people like breaking into Nordstrom's who regularly shoplift at Nordstrom Rack.
Oh,
she's like, oh, it's that guy. And it's, so there are totally people who are like, now's the time. I got to get those designer handbags that I've been scouting for 2 years.
Yeah. I think we're seeing the best and the worst of people pop up right now. I don't know if anybody who's listening is also a member of the Strange Eons magazine page, but I had reposted Philip Fricassi's Horror Writers. He was putting up a GoFundMe of horror writers to raise money for Black Lives Matter and the NAACP. And he just exploded. I think he put a goal of 2,500, and they got $10,000 in the first day.
Whoa.
And, I reposted on the Strange Eons page, and the response to it was mostly good.
Yeah.
But there are the people who then jumped all over me about saying how this wasn't on topic for the magazine. And I'm like, well, if Philip Fricassi had put a GoFundMe up for any other reason, I would have shared it, because he is a horror writer that we publish, and nobody would have batted an eye. But the fact that this was for Black Lives Matter, you had to, make a statement of how this is not on topic for Strange Eons magazine. And I finally just said, fuck you. You don't deserve my page.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of where we're at. A lot of people have said, look, this is an important thing. Now's the time in which it's becoming something that we're all looking at head on, and it's taken a long time to get here. And even like Shudder revealed their Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Everybody's doing this. Yeah, you can get it. It just says Shudder in black with a line through it. I don't know. It's you would never in a million years think that that's what it is, but I'm getting newsletters from freaking like beauty products being like, we care about BLM. And I'm like, what? Okay, sure. Sounds good, guys. I'm glad to know.
My guess would be like Shudder is putting out a shirt that's not overt, but the proceeds for that shirt are probably going to the Black Lives. Yeah. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I would just say that if you've got a problem with this, probably you should keep it to yourself. This is one of those things where a lot of people feel very strongly about this. And if you don't understand it and everything, then count yourself lucky.
There's a huge undercurrent going on, and if you happen to be a filmmaker who's inclined to be an idiot about this and make some stupid statement, and there's some horrifying things. These aren't just like, I kind of support police. They're horrifying, racist, news-based things. Thankfully, I know none of them. I don't recognize a single name that has submitted or been involved with the festivals I've run, but their names are getting out there. And
I saw that on a forum as well. A filmmaker that I met in New York, he had started blasting out some comments that he was seeing and just straight up tagging the people and saying, hey, this is what you said. And everyone in New York who works in the film industry should know that that's what you believe. And it was just so many people being like, man, okay, I'm going to add his name to my list of do not hires. Yeah. Like you said, Kelly, I think now is a really good time not to speak up unless you really want a quick education as to why this matters from every one of your friends and family members out there.
Right. Well, guys, I haven't watched a ton of stuff this week, and that is because I have been reading the new Stephen King book, which is called If It Bleeds. And boy, it's good. I'm only about 150 pages in, but it is really, really good. I still think King is the master of storytelling. He's definitely the master of characters, and we'll see if he can end this book or not. I think it's 4 novellas again. I'm not quite sure. I'm ashamed to say that I bought it digitally, and so I don't know exactly what I'm getting into. But 150 pages in, I sure love it. So.
It's awesome. It's nice that now is the time that got released. I've seen it on a lot of shelves in like Target and stuff, and I think he's probably getting some good sales out of that book.
Probably, yeah.
Well, I did manage to see something finally. I saw The Turning.
Oh.
Which is the most recent. Did you really?
Mm-hmm. Which one? I don't think I'm familiar with this one.
Mackenzie Davis, who, she's cool, super cool, love her. Has been choosing some questionable roles. It's a remake of Turning of the Screw, yet again.
This like this year film.
This year, last year, something like that. But the ending, I'm not even giving it away. It's just that they don't choose. They choose to not choose an ending. And it is just such a freaking frustrating decision, because it's just like, you don't get to do that. I'm sorry. You got to be brave and decide which way you're going. You just have to. You've already put in this much to make this damn film, which is super mediocre, but it's fine. Like, I was still like, okay, it's an all right, it's fine. I can do this. And then at the end I was like, you guys suck and I hate you.
The reviews look kind of brutal about it.
I think super mediocre is being very kind.
Yeah, it's very like horror, like the 2020 horror by numbers movie. Yeah. Oh. It's got mannequins. It's got jump scares. It's probably like a PG-13 though. I don't think it's.
I think it is a PG-13, and really, I thought it was just boring as hell, just a yawn fest.
It is very dull, but I mean, like, I get it. Like, I'm trying to remember the famous version of this film that was put out in the 50s or 60s. It's on Criterion Collection.
I think Oliver Reed is in that, maybe.
The Innocence, I think.
The Innocence. Yeah.
Like, that one is it is long, and it has like a lot of just slow moments in it. So because it's based off of a novel, I do feel like there's an appropriate that makes sense to approach it that way, but you can't have like jump scares and then try to do like what they did. And be
Right.
like, and now we're going to go down a slow, long hallway, and we're going to look at a pond, and we're going to let the eeriness settle in. But then watch out, there's a mannequin. It's like, no, like you can't have it both ways. You can't stop. What about you, Eric?
So you're not recommending that one, I take it.
Hell no. Do not waste your time. Unless you really love Mackenzie Davis, which I do, then why not? Sure.
Yeah, there's always something I guess you could find. Now I watched, I said last week I thought we'd sort of hit the end of the giant action 80s, 90s films. Still found another one.
Ooh.
True Lies.
Oh man.
Oh, dude.
It's fun. It's still fun. It's ludicrous and mind suspending, shall we say? But it's Cameron, so it's incredibly well shot. It looks great. It's probably Tom Arnold's best role.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Bill Paxton's best role, maybe.
Yeah, he was not well treated in that film, but that's one of the things he does best.
I love that movie. I still love True Lies. I think that's a solid flick.
Sometimes, you got to watch something like that while you're in the world we're currently living in. Ooh, what's something brainless? That's fun.
Well, speaking of something brainless, one of the things I did watch, and I was scratching my head the entire time going, why am I watching this? I wanted to revisit Cool World, the Ralph Bakshi movie that was part cartoon and part Gabriel Byrne and part Brad Pitt. And part the lovely Kim Basinger. It's like all three of these amazing actors forgot how to act. I think that's probably what I thought when I first saw it, but I think more likely is that Ralph Bakshi is unable to direct humans.
Yeah, live action people.
Yeah. So I just watched it going, God, there's so much going on here and there's so much to like. But every time one of them opened their mouths, it was awful. And it was because this was prior to computer graphics and all this stuff. So they're not, I don't think they're even acting against tennis balls. I think they're just being told, she'll be standing over here, so look in that general direction when you talk. The eye lines never match up or anything like that. It's really bad. It's like an R-rated version of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So,
but less successful.
Yeah, I was, I don't know. A lot of these movies you go back and maybe you didn't care for it and then you watch it 30 years later and you're like, what the hell was I thinking? I was a huge snob back then. But in this case, I was right. Back then, I was right about this movie.
Yeah, that's not a good one.
Oh man, I've been doing a similar thing to both of you guys, like finding a little piece of escapism. So I've been listening to a podcast series called Dolly Parton's America. And it is just so pleasant. I cannot under stress how very pleasant this podcast is. It's just like all the good in the world wrapped up in Dolly Parton.
Oh, so it's sort of like that Some Good News show that
I've never
the guy
heard that.
from The Office did.
Is this Dolly Parton narrating this podcast?
No. So it's somebody from Radiolab went to do an episode on Dolly Parton because his father, who's a doctor, had worked on her when she had like a car accident and had become friends with her. And he was like, that's weird. My Lebanese like doctor father is friends with Dolly Parton. Huh. And so he started like an interview and discovered there was just so much there to like unpack that he did a 9-part series. So it's like about 9 hours worth of, like they go to like Dollywood and talk about like the use of her childhood home there. They talk about like culturally, like where she came from. They talk about all of her really sad, depressing songs, which I did not realize how dark she was to begin with. So it's good. It's really fascinating. And every time she talks, she's just so happy and upbeat that it's just like.
I fucking love Dolly Parton. She is awesome.
Oh my God. She's incredible. I never gave her much credit. And she's had a real resurgence in the last, 5-10 years.
She has?
Everyone loves her.
Yeah.
Is she still performing?
Yeah. Or at least she did. She did one really big show, which actually was kind of caught onto part of the tape for this particular series. And he said that it was crazy because everyone of every creed was there. You had like gun-toting Republican, Southerners. You had LGBT people there, like two moms holding hands with their daughter, adopted child. They have like everyone, and drag queens, and just anyone who's everyone is out there enjoying her because she speaks across like kind of all borders. And he said it was weird because basically everyone was just getting along at this concert. Like no one was like, screw you. Everyone's like, yeah, let's all love Dolly together.
Oh man, I love
That's
it.
great.
Yeah, I've always liked her. I have a soft spot for a lot of her songs. I think she's gorgeous, of course.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that she was still performing. That's crazy. She's got to be in her 70s.
She must be.
Yeah,
she must be. Yeah, exactly. At least. But looking good and working hard.
What's the name of the show again?
It's called Dolly Parton's America.
So one of the ones I watched maybe for this subject this week was a film called Brutal, which is a Japanese film. And I guess the name works, but it was incredibly frustrating because it was a screen order through Vimeo. It didn't advertise. It had no subtitles.
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
And you got the basic storyline. It was not a deep story, but...
You're saying your Japanese is a little rusty.
Incredibly rusty. Didn't understand a thing. But it was a strange storyline. The whole idea was a serial killer guy was looking for his true love, and he runs into a serial killer woman.
Wow.
And it was not a romantic ending.
I was going to say, hilarity ensues.
Love blossoms.
Yes, yeah. The way they find out their kindred souls is truly disturbing. So if you have any interest in this film, stop listening for 30 seconds because I'm going to disturb people. They find out their kindred spirits because both of them have removed and or sewn up all sexual organs on themselves.
Oh.
So
ouch.
All sexual organs or their sexual? I mean, how many sexual organs are we talking about?
But the guy was castrated himself and the lady was...
She just closed up shop.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't like that movement at all, Vanessa.
That's the only way I can imagine that.
It was actually
I'm
accurate.
I'm going to pass out thinking about it.
It's perfectly accurate, too.
God.
That was pleasant.
Well, why don't we take a little break so I can splash some water on my face, hear from our sponsors, and come back and talk about this lovely topic you brought to us, Eric.
Come out, wherever you are. I've got new Mountain Dew Zero Sugar with the same refreshing taste as the original, but without any of the sugar.
I'm thirsty.
Huh? Zero sugar. Zero sugar. Zero sugar.
And we are back. Hey, Eric, this is your fault. I mean, your pick.
Yes.
This was one of the more unpleasant. Now, we all have the right to veto a genre or a subgenre pick, and I don't think any of us have ever exercised that right.
Wait, we do? Hold on.
When I say we all, Vanessa, I meant Eric and I.
Oh, okay. I don't think I was in on that meeting.
Right. And we've never really exercised that, but this was an extremely unpleasant subgenre.
Well, when I originally floated the idea out, I did say I fully understand because of where you guys sit on this kind of film. That if you don't want to do this, that's fine. We can try something else.
I know. And my feeling is always the more uncomfortable I am with a genre, the better, because it'll force me to find something that I like. But, and I kind of did with this, but this whole extreme horror thing, it's really funny. You can kind of tell if it's extreme horror, it's from the 2000s.
Yeah,
it's from that decade.
There's a lot of them from that.
Because, when you talk atomic horror, that's from the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk, the drugs and stuff like that, horror, you're into the 60s or 70s. And the 2000s were extreme everything. It was extreme sports. It was extreme motocross. It was Mountain Dew extreme. And
it's
unfortunately,
Mountain Dew Baja.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was also extreme horror. So
what was going on that we wanted that so bad? Because I remember Human Centipede coming out, and I have not seen it and did not watch it for this, but being why do we need this? What is it about our world in which we need this film?
I'll float out though on that one.
Mm-hmm.
The content sounds extreme. The film is not.
You don't see them
it's just unpleasant.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know.
I wonder.
It feels like, when there's that zeitgeist film that everybody kind of knows about and goes, oh, that's the one that's horrible.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Right. Compared to others.
Yeah. But it's gross.
I wonder if it's that the generation of young kids who are watching movies in the early 80s that had for the first time, some pretty stunning effects like American Werewolf or The Thing.
Yeah.
I wonder if they grew up to become filmmakers and they were like, I need some extreme effects in my film. And that's why we got that kind of
could be
thing. Because that seems to be the hallmark of these movies is super realistic gore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the French were leading the charge in that.
Well, Eric, why don't you kick us off then?
Okay. Well, you mentioned 2000s. Mine's not from the 2000s, though.
Oh.
It's a very independent film from 2015 called Flowers. It's a unique one, and I do the basics on it here. It's not listed on Rotten Tomatoes. There's one review for a movie called Flowers that attributes to this film, but it's for a Japanese movie. So whoever did the tagging for that one got the wrong film.
Did they at least get a high Rotten Tomatoes out of it?
Yeah, that one would have been all right, but no, there's only one review, so no consensus was available. It's approximately a $20,000 budget. Writer-director named Phil Stevens, whose other films include a few short films, Lung, which is a follow-up to this one, and Flowers 2. So he does his own thing. There are 6 performers in it, 6 or 7. Almost every actress listed is pretty much the only thing they've done. And Anastasia Blue, however, did appear in Undead Zombie Hookers.
Excellent.
Colette Kennedy, Crystal Fitch, they do good. I'd be curious to find out how the casting was done and how the performances were done, because it kind of feels like it was a group of people that knew each other and decided to work together to make this film. And maybe a few of them were hired on, but there was a lot of trust in this movie to be done. The description of it is called an abstract, surreal horror film centering around 6 dead women that wake up in the crawl space below the killer's house.
They're dead and they wake up?
Yeah. Yep. So the idea is it's almost like purgatory, sort of, except a hellish purgatory, because they wake up and then kind of view how they were killed, sort of, or experience how they killed. This is an interpretation. This is really an abstract film. So, Kelly, I do not recommend this film for you at all.
Perfect.
It's very abstract-y, and it's not violent like a Friday the 13th film or Saw or something is violent. It's almost all aftermath, ghoul and gore. There's a little bit of stuff there's some stuff that happens that is overt violence, but a lot of it is just grim. It's uncomfortable. It's dark to watch. It's actually one that I ran across Phil Stevens on Facebook or something, and I ended up just like buying his movie from him. Well, this version was put out by Unearthed Films, who puts out some pretty vile stuff. And he's fun in the way he writes. He signs it, but he signs all these, anything you see on Black and Silver is something he added.
Oh, cool.
And on the side, I like that he wrote, "Do you like this kind of stuff?" Yeah, boy. Let's see. Let's keep going on how to describe this film, because I think that's the only way it's going to go. It's when the women wake up in different times. Sometimes they're crawling through grim, whoa! I hear their calls. They're crawling through gruesome stuff. They're crawling through uncomfortable things that aren't really easy to identify, but just feel gross and uncomfortable. The set design is incredible. It is fantastic, horrifying and dark and weird. The full reality of what the women are going through is hard to understand. It's hard to see if they're living or if they're dead. It's sort of like I said, sort of like they're in kind of a weird limbo world and trying to figure out where they are and then experiencing some horrific stuff. For example, the most violent one is a woman gets kind of gutted on a bed. The weirdest one is seeming to be a totally different sentence. Let's see how I wrote it. This is kind of an odd scene where one of the women seems to be pleasantly eating a ton of food. Is she more alive? Then I wrote, okay, never mind. Because it starts out, she's pleasantly eating, having fun. It's kind of gross just because, people eating on screen can look really gross, even if it's not gruesome. Then it turns really kind of gross, and it's obviously she's getting sick from this. This is an astoundingly unpleasant film. But it is incredible filmmaking at the same time. The music is really good and really subtle. It's not John Williams telling you where to cheer and feel good or cry. It is background sounds that lend to the uncomfortableness but don't overtake what's going on. The sound design is also incredibly well done. It's so many gross noises and just strange sounds of people moving through whatever the women were moving through. There are times it's offset where you can tell the sound is off a little bit, but it feels intentional because it's not like the DVD was mastered poorly or something. It feels like there is moments where the filmmaker decided, okay, this is going to be even more uncomfortable because the sound is, when the fork hits the plate, it's going to be just frames off. And I'm curious how somebody who doesn't edit video, how that would, has it worked a lot in video and audio if it's a different experience for them? Because I hear that and I instantly think, okay, I need to adjust my sound. And then as it goes on, I realize, no, it's not just that one noise. It's not just all things are moving a few frames forward. Some are moving a few frames forward. Some are moving a few frames back. It's very obviously intentional. So it's done very well. This film was the reason I kind of recommended, to be honest. I think I've had this movie for 4 or 5 months, maybe longer. I'm like, I just don't know if I want to watch this, because everything I'd read about it and everything I saw was really uncomfortable. And I am curious about the extremes in films. And you know what? I feel my hesitation was warranted because this is it's a really unique viewing experience. I mean, I've seen all of the super ones, like hell, Serbian film played in Myth. So and that's an uncomfortable film, but it's an incredibly well-told film. If you cut out 10 or 20 minutes of horrible violence, it'd just be a pretty intense thriller, because it's incredibly well acted, it's really well told, it's a film. This is something different, and it's really interesting, and I don't want to say I enjoyed it, but I think it was exactly what it meant to be, and I think Phil Stevens nailed what he was going for. And I look at it as a really interesting achievement in a very, very dark art. And the guy was serious about this. There's not a lot to think. The director remodeled his home in some ways to be able to shoot the things he wanted to shoot. I'm pretty sure he created some crawl spaces and some room between rooms areas for the women to crawl through or walk through. It messed up his house for a little while because he couldn't navigate through the house very well because he'd done so much work to it. But I think that's been fixed since now. But so I would say, if you are into extreme films, if you've seen the Necromantics and the Serbians and the Edge of film, this is one to definitely add into your watch list. If you can't find it, look for Phil Stevens on Facebook. He's incredibly responsive and will sell them to you. This one that I got, I actually purchased directly from him because it was out of print and no longer available. He just happened to have a few copies left. He was selling himself. So I'm like, I'll take it. I know since then it's been reissued and is available again through other means. I don't know if this is streaming anywhere. I'd be kind of surprised if it is. But again, there's Flowers from 2015. And if you look for Phil Stevens, he's got strange, crazy art on his Facebook page or probably Instagram as well. So you'll go, this is probably him. So, that's mine for this week.
Wow.
Cool. Vanessa?
It's really hard to be like, I'll go next on this one. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely something I was not at all looking forward to doing. And I am pretty happy with my choice because I went super artsy. I don't enjoy watching people getting hurt for no reason. That's but it's fine. It's fine, Eric. I did it. I finally watched a film I've been putting off for years. So I watched 2009's Antichrist.
You too much medication. Never screw your therapist. Let's make a list of things you're afraid of.
The woods.
What scares you about the woods?
Eden.
You have to have the courage to stay in the situation that frightens you.
Do you love me?
is not burning.
Your thoughts distort reality.
Everything that used to be beautiful about Eden was perhaps hideous.
That's what fear is.
I heard a sound, the cry of all the things that are to die. Nature is Satan's church.
Do you know what you're saying?
You shouldn't underestimate Eden.
Tell me what you think is supposed to happen in the woods.
Where are you? You shouldn't come here. Get out!
So this is a film by Lars von Trier. It's incredibly divisive. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 53% critics and 55% audience. And I don't think that's because people were like, oh, I like 50% enjoyed it. I think it's I 100% enjoyed it or I 0% enjoyed it. It's a very people either love or hate this film. So for years, I've been hearing people be like, oh my God, that's my favorite movie. And other people be like, it's fucking filth and pointless and blah, blah, blah. So that was my setup for it. But I've seen a lot of Lars von Trier and, you know, I wanted to go ahead and, you know, check it out. I've seen Melancholia. It is 1/3 of his depression series. And the last one is part 1 and 2 of Nymphomaniac, which I have not seen. I don't know if I'm going to see it, but whatever. Maybe we'll get to a obsessed with sex series and then I can throw
watch
it in.
all 3.
Yes. So the budget for this film, man. Okay, the budget is 11 million. The box office, I think, just for United States was 404,000, and the total worldwide box office brought in 7.4 million. So it is a money loser. It may have since made up its totals in like DVD sales or online streaming sales or something, but it did not do well. It's 108 minutes long, and it's a mix of color and black and white. A brief summary of this is a grieving couple who have lost their only child retreat to their vacation home in a place called Eden. It's an isolated cabin in the woods where they try to repair their broken hearts and troubled marriage, but nature takes its course and things go from bad to worse. Tagline, when nature turns evil, true terror awaits. So obviously this is going to be about nature.
And I saw some of it too. I turned it off
Eric,
about 15 minutes in.
Okay. Wow.
I probably had the weirdest reason anybody ever had for stopping to watch this, not watching the rest of this film. My dad was a psychologist.
Oh.
So I grew up with psychology and stuff. And I almost feel silly saying this is the reason I stopped watching it. I got so pissed at the psychology he was doing to help his wife. I'm like, oh, fuck this. I don't, this is such nasty level of abuse this guy is doing to his wife. I have no interest in watching the rest of it, because if this tries to redeem him in any way, I'm not going to want to watch it. It's like, nope.
No, your instincts were super right on. Actually, that is one of the components. They're both hurting each other in different ways, and that's the way that he's hurting her. He's totally mind fucking her, and I agree. Like, watching that was very uncomfortable. It's weird because you don't actually get into the like really physically messed up stuff until very close to the end, and a lot of the lead up is just disturbing. It's just deeply, consistently disturbing. And in some ways it's super subtle. Like you've got William Dafoe, who's trying to help his wife get through this really horrible event in their lives by being her therapist, which is the worst idea ever. And through immersion therapy, which he is hosting, and then he keeps randomly having sex with her and being like, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. It's like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing any of this. So you've got that, and then you have just like occasional like really weird imagery that's going on. So like there is a sort of tension that's building throughout the film before you get to the kind of really fun stuff. Let's talk just for a minute about who's involved in this movie. So we've got the director Lars von Trier, who you guys might know from the 5 Obstruction / Dogma 95. He was part of this European team that was like, we're going to make true, authentic film. We're not going to use lights. We're not going to use camera tricks. We're not going to blah, blah, blah. And then he immediately broke it, which made everyone super pissed with him. They're like, oh, sure, Lars. Yeah, pure cinema. Cool. He's done pretty much only divisive films like Breaking the Waves. And I've seen Dogville. I know people either love or hate that. And then he also did a series called Kingdom, which I actually do really want to see. But anyway,
that's good. I like that series.
That's probably one of my favorite things he's done. Yeah.
I'm really stoked about that. I think that sounds very interesting. There's only 3 actors in this film, so at least the 11 million went to good use. Like it mostly went to actual visuals and the great actors that he got for this, which includes William Dafoe, who, if you don't know, he has 135 credits. You might know him as his prime roles, like Green Goblin in Spider-Man. He plays Volko in Aquaman. Speed 2, Cruise Control. He's John Geiger. Gil in Finding Nemo, and let's not forget Carson Clay in Mr. Bean's Holiday. So
Jesus, he was Jesus too.
Yes. So actually, William Dafoe, he was Jesus. So this is kind of playing devil's advocate. He started off in the 1980s. He was in Heaven's Gate in an uncredited role. Then he went on to be in Platoon, Last Temptation of Christ, and more recently, he's had like a pretty big success through things like Florida Project and Life Aquatic, and most recently The Lighthouse. So we all know good old William. He's great. He's freaking amazing. I don't even thank you, Willem. He's I hate The Lighthouse, but I liked him. So and then so he plays the character He. That's actually the name that they gave him. She, which is the other character, is played by Charlotte Gainsbourg. She was actually the second choice for this role. And it's kind of, I guess, lucky for her that she got it, because she then went on to star in all 3 of his Depression films. So originally, I think it was meant to be Emma Frost, but she turned it down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Charlotte Gainsbourg originally is a little bit more of an actress-singer. She was raised in Paris, child of singer-songwriter Sergei Gainsbourg, but she kind of made her emergence in films like she was in Jane Eyre, she was in Science of Sleep, and in Todd Haynes' I'm Not There. And then most recently, she's just been in all 3 of these Depression films. So both incredible. That is one thing I'll say straight up, is these 2 actors brought it. And then there's the kid who has never done anything before or since. I don't know. I couldn't find his backstory. I don't know why he's there. He's like 2 years old or something. So he's walking, but whatever. The story, I'm probably just going to go off of the names of the actors to describe this, because it's just a little easier. So William Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg have a bunch of sex. And while they're having sex, their infant child climbs out of a window and falls to his death during a snowstorm. From that point, we go through 4 sections. So the film becomes sectioned off. In the first section, we've got Charlotte Gainsbourg passes out during her child's funeral, and then she's put into a hospital where she's severely drugged and is under kind of a medical program of recovery. But her husband, William Dafoe, thinks this is BS, and he feels like this is not the way to grieve. So he pulls her out, he detoxes her so that she's basically just like coming off of high amounts of medication. She's incredibly depressed. He takes her into the home where the child died, and he's like, yeah, don't worry, we're going to get through this together. And she's just sobbing constantly. And then he's doing things like, having sex with her randomly because she really wants to have sex because she's just all over the map. And there's a lot of sex in this film. Then we go off to the woods. He asks her what her biggest fear is, and she says Eden, which is this place that she went off to do her thesis paper and was not able to complete. So Eden is their vacation home. He's like, okay, we're going to have you walk through the grass. So you go to Eden, and she has to walk across the grass, and that's part of her therapy. And she's like, I don't want to do the grass. Okay, whatever. It's fine. This place, it's hard at first because you're like, why would anyone not like this location? It seems like a paradise to go to, but you start to see once they arrive why she didn't enjoy it. For example, like just getting there, you have to go through like this section of woods that's completely burnt down. So that's kind of weird. And then like the animals are really odd. Like as they're going towards the house, there's a bird that like pushes basically a baby chick falls out of a tree, and then ants start to crawl all over it, and then another bird comes in, swoops in, and starts to eat it. So you see that there's like something wrong here. Their first night, they're trying to sleep, and there's this horrible sound, and it's the sound of acorns. There's this giant oak tree above their house, and it's just constantly shedding acorns all night long on a metal roof. And so there's just this tension that's building and building. Meanwhile, his recovery plan seems to, she says, have worked. She's succeeded. She's cured. Everything's fine. And I don't know if this is like her finding a way to say, let's leave, or if she really has recovered. But right at the moment in which she has been fixed through his methods, which also includes like hypnosis and random other shit, he goes into the attic and discovers her abandoned thesis project, which is on, I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's on, not genocide, but gynocide, which is the torturing and killing of women under the justification that they brought the original sin. So there's just a lot of like pictures of medieval torturing of women, and like she has a scrapbook, and in her scrapbook that has like all this like research material, it has her writing, and her writing across it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And it seems like actually something is even more broken in her than initially suggested. He also finds Polaroids because she had taken her son with her to do this thesis paper. He finds Polaroids, and in every single picture, her son's shoes are on backwards. And in the coroner's report, which he finally opens up near the end, the kid was fine except for had malformed feet. So there's this odd idea that actually maybe unconsciously or consciously she was doing something to their child, and maybe that caused the child to stumble out of the window because it couldn't stand properly. So everything starts to get really weird from this point forward. I don't want to talk about it. Just stuff is bad. It gets really bad. She suddenly basically becomes this sort of evil side of female nature. He's like, you don't possibly believe, it sounds like in your thesis, you suddenly believe that women actually are evil and they are part of nature. Nature is evil. Therefore, because women are ruled by nature, they are also evil. And so therefore, everyone who was killing them was justified in doing so. You don't actually believe that. And she was like, but it's true.
Oh my.
Yes. Yeah, that was fun. Then it gets, there's this great woodshed where you see there's all kinds of tools out there, and finally they come into play. So she knocks him unconscious and screws a hole through his leg, and then puts like a wheel contraption, like a giant cement wheel, through like a peg, and then screws it onto his leg so he can't go anywhere. There's other genitalia stuff that if you really want to know, just watch it. He then wakes up and tries to get out, and he like can't. The bolt is like basically busted onto this long bar, so he can't get it off. So he's got to drag his like wheel with him out and into the woods. And in the woods, she goes searching for him, finds him hiding in this foxhole, and starts attacking him with a shovel, basically tries to dig him out. And in the end, it comes to a battle of survival where he crushes her throat and murders her. So there's a lot more going on in this film. Beyond the weird, gross out stuff, there's a lot of religious stuff going on. And I will say that the kind of themes that are happening in this film are the things that I liked about it. So we have this sort of theme of killing your own child. We have 3 animals that are constantly popping back up, and they're supposed to represent pain, despair, and grief. It's like a deer, a fox, and a bird. And all 3 of them, the deer has a stillborn baby that it runs around, and the baby is like hanging out of it. The bird pushes its young out of the nest and kills its own child, and the fox eats its own unborn baby out of its own stomach. So you have this, yes, but I like this pulling it apart and saying, okay, who we're trying to get in the devil's favor, the ultimate sacrifice would be to have your own child and then murder it. So there's kind of like this interesting thing going on underneath that's sort of fascinating, but it doesn't quite jive with this other idea of their marriage and depression and there's something not quite right. And I think what happened is the film was originally supposed to have a different ending. It was supposed to come out in 2005, and the producer, Peter Jensen, revealed in accident the ending. And Lars von Trier was so angry, he then put it on, he halted the project, and he did a rewrite. But the original ending was that it was supposed to be revealed that Satan created Earth, not God, and that the Garden of Eden was an evil place. And so by going to Eden, they're reliving kind of the initial man and woman, being created, but it's all horrible. I like that. That's cool. That's powerful. What he did is switch this into a female versus male piece about the nature of who we are and how like the man is manipulating the woman through words, and the woman attacks the man physically. It just gets really, whether or not Lars von Trier is misogynist, this film is incredibly misogynist. Like you can't divorce it. It builds a thesis that says women are natural and evil, and nature is evil, so they are just evil. And she thinks it's true, and it's happened, and he thinks it's true, and he has to kill her because of it. And then at the end, you have all these women who've been murdered, who like come out of the earth and come and either attack him or hang out with him. I don't know. They cut out before we get there. So it really undercuts itself, I think, in that way. And it becomes disgusting because it's just so repulsive, that like thought, and the fact that they're playing that through all the way, that anything about grief or any of the other stuff that they're playing with just gets washed away. Like they even basically rewrite her relationship to her child, and they show initially she doesn't notice her child crawling out the window while they're having sex, and in the end they show, actually she opened her eyes partway in the sex and saw the child climbing towards the window. And I'm like, what? Where did this come from? What the frick is going on here? So it's interesting. I think it's worth checking out. As far as, it's very beautiful. It's really almost like operatic. There's some cool things to think about in this film, but there's just a lot of misplaced things going on. Like none of the torture porn basically needs to be there. It's all very odd. Like just everything feels like it's not, like it doesn't know where it's going, even though it it knows where it's going, but it's not the place that it should be going. So
is there an Antichrist in this movie?
that's the question, right? So Antichrist. So one thing that I read was, well, she was malforming her child's feet, and therefore you can tie that somehow very loosely into this idea of Satan having hoofs, right? Like weird feet. And so was she creating the Antichrist? But then why did she let it die? Or, it's no, not really. What is the Antichrist?
I was going to say that's a pretty loose connection right there.
Yeah.
Well, one of the trivia things is that that was the first thing they came up with for this film was the title. And then they went from there. So the title existed first. And I think, honestly, I'm wondering if the original version was more of a Antichrist, like she has, like their child was the Antichrist, because that would make some kind of sense. Where they left it does not make sense.
The title before the movie, like Eric's favorite movie, Con Air.
There you go. Huh?
Exactly.
I'll bet
Con
that's more
Air pulled it
entertaining.
off. It is. Con Air did it right. Con Air succeeded where Lars von Trier failed.
That's right.
A couple of just really final kind of interesting things, though. I did find it fascinating. So the sound engineer for this, to get some of the soundtrack noises or weird sounds happening throughout, he actually swallowed a microphone and recorded his inner body. I thought that was neat.
That's commitment.
That's commitment.
That's extreme.
Lars von Trier made this right after coming out of a mental institute where he was there for depression. So this was the first film that he did. He was not in a good state of mind, and he had to take a lot of breaks. And this is initially set in Seattle. So, hey guys, Harborview call out, woot woot. Harborview's on all the paperwork for the
Weird.
coroner report for their child. So.
But it wasn't shot in the States even, was it?
I actually don't know. I didn't get
Probably.
that far.
And he's Danish.
Yeah, I would have
Wow.
thought it would have been shot there.
Who knows?
There's, it probably was shot over there because the only thing you see of Seattle is like their apartment. Like you don't in the inside of a hospital room. Like it could be anywhere. So I'm sure they probably filmed it wherever they could get access to these woods at.
Right. Wow. I guess I got to go next.
Want to continue the joy?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Kelly. I just gave you like a dissertation and then bailed.
Well, originally, so I did, a little half-assed internet research like I do with all of the topics, and I pulled out a list of most extreme films, many of which I had seen, many of which I'd already spoken about. I Saw the Devil was on every one of those lists, and I think that is definitely a very extreme film. And then one that I had seen when it first came out, and I remember being really impressed with it, and I decided I was going to give that a watch, and I was also going to give Ichi the Killer a watch because I'd never seen Ichi the Killer. I watched the movie I picked, and I thought, I'm going to give Ichi the Killer a watch. I started watching Ichi the Killer. I think it is a better movie than the movie I picked, but I literally had no fucking idea what was going on in it. It was super gory and extreme, but I was just sitting there saying, how am I going to describe this film? I'm like, it's not worth it. And I'm already too deep into, I've done a movie and a half of this horrible subgenre. I'm not going to try another movie. So what I ended up picking from 2008 is a movie called Dead Girl.
If you close your eyes, can you make our sky? Is there a sky?
What are you staring at?
Rick, you gotta get over that, man. You lost Joanne to puberty, you ain't getting her back.
Look, man, what are we gonna do? Let's go to the nut house. What do you say? Are there any security guards there or something? There's no security guards, man. The place is dead. I see a door down here. Push harder. JT, what the hell, man? What's going on? We gotta get out of here, JT. Hold on a second. We could keep her. Is there something that you gotta see? What did you do to her, JT? What the did you do to her? Look at her. This isn't real. us.
Hey, baby, you miss me?
Hey, Ricky, everything all right? Just asking for trouble, JT. We're all gonna get arrested or worse. Down here, we're in control. We call the shots. Joanne Skinner? She'll never choose you, man. Thinks I can't see it when he's staring over Joanne. Whatever you hear after tonight, you should know that I tried to stop you. Do you understand me? I'm gonna get you out of here, okay? For your benefit, Rick. She's all yours.
You guys see this one?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
Saw it at SIF.
Yeah, I think I did too. And I walked out of there. I remember being very impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I like the movie, but I remember walking out going, oh, wow, that was heavy. I could find no budget or box office numbers. The Rotten Tomatoes critic score is only 29%.
Ouch.
And the audience has it at 40%. So not much better. This is a difficult movie to watch. I could understand a lot of people not liking this movie. It was directed by Marcel Sarmiento, who has directed segments in the ABCs of Death, VHS Viral, and then a feature film called Totem that I think I saw, and I can't remember if I liked. It was from 2011 or 12. Does that ring a bell for you guys? It was a horror flick. It was written by Trent Haga, who is a working actor with 62 credits so far. One of them, Eric, he was the friend of the dad in Stay at Home Dad.
Oh, cool.
But he is also the writer of Toxic Avenger 4, Citizen Toxie, Cheap Thrills. I don't know about you, Vanessa, but I know that Eric, you like that movie. So do I. And 19 other writing credits. So it was kind of interesting to see that this writer is also a working actor. It stars Shiloh Fernandez, who has gone on to have small parts in movies like Red, Cadillac Records, the Evil Dead remake. He was one of the guys in that. It also stars Noah Segan, who was in Brick, Knives Out, and The Last Jedi. Are we sensing a pattern with who he works with? And Candace King, who is now in The Vampire Diaries, the originals, and The Orville. Okay, this movie. This definitely falls into the extreme category, but the reason it's extreme is a little bit different. There's definitely some gore in this and everything. But it starts off with these two ne'er-do-well teenagers skipping school, and they decide to, steal some beer and go hang out at this abandoned mental hospital on the outskirts of town. And they get in there and they just start trashing the place. These little shits are vandalizing everything and pulling old files out, and throwing everything around and shit like that. They decide to delve a little deeper than they ever have into this place, and they end up kind of in this downstairs area that's really dark and creepy looking, and they run afoul of a feral dog, which chases them. This feral dog chases them, and they get kind of lost in this place. They're in an area they've never been, and they end up climbing into this weird hole that's just out of the dog's reach, and then dropping into this other area that has a door that is blocked off. And they're like, oh, what's in here? So they get the door open, and they find in a body bag a dead girl strapped to a table. And they unzip the body bag, and they're like, oh, my God, what is this? Because she looks freshly dead. She doesn't look like she is rotted or anything like that. And then she kind of turns her head and looks at them, and they're very freaked out. One of the boys we're supposed to kind of identify with. It's very difficult, because he's such a shit. But his friend is much, much worse. His friend wants to keep the girl a secret to themselves, and to the point where the one we're supposed to identify with, Ricky, he threatens, I think we need to go tell the cops. And his friend, punches him and says, get the fuck out of here, and you'll get much worse if you do tell the cops. The next day, he's at school. He's got a crush on this girl he's had a crush on forever. I guess he knew her and they were friends when they were in elementary school. But she has grown up to be very beautiful and popular, and he has turned into, an outsider. He's the type of kid you would expect to be trashing a abandoned mental hospital and skipping school. But he still kind of tries to reach out to her occasionally, and she's friendly enough, but she is dating an aggressively 90s bully boyfriend from the movies.
Oh, yeah.
That guy.
Yeah, the kind of guy that doesn't really exist, but he beats up Ricky for talking to his girlfriend, shit like that. They try to put him in kind of a sympathetic position, and that you're like, yeah, I get it. He's an outsider because he's weird, but he's also getting beat up by jock types, which we're supposed to, then feel sorry for him. So it's one of those things. He then, stumbles off and goes back to the abandoned hospital where he finds his friend with the dead girl. And the dead girl is beat up. She's got a bloody nose and a black eye. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And he goes, well, I started fucking her, and she started screaming. Well, not screaming so much as just kind of grunting and growling, but she kept trying to bite me. So I had to strangle her twice to kill her. And she just kept coming back. And
Wow.
And now Ricky's like, the fuck is wrong with you? And what are you talking about? And why are you fucking her? And all of this stuff. And his buddy pulls out a gun and proceeds to shoot the girl 3 times to prove that she does not die. So now this is where things start getting really uncomfortable, because you realize, oh, okay, his friend's plan is to keep this girl chained to this slab and use her as a sex slave. She can't die, so he can do whatever he wants to her. And she can't speak. She grunts and all of this stuff. It's very unpleasant. At this point, the kid is now, he's just horrified, Ricky, and he leaves. He comes back at one point to free the girl. But when he gets there, he finds out that his buddy is there already, and there's another friend that his buddy has brought now. And that guy is raping the girl on the slab. And so there's another confrontation, and his friend is telling Ricky, hey, look, this guy, we can trust him. He's one of our group and everything. And it becomes this story of boys behaving badly, and you understand that you feel uncomfortably sure that something like this could happen. Vanessa, you have not had the displeasure of being a boy going through puberty in high school.
It's true.
Your hormones are off the chart, and all you can think about is sex. And you watch these teenage guys doing this shit, and you're like, I feel horrified, because I feel like there are guys that would find a dead body and decide, I'll fuck this dead body.
Yeah, totally. Like, it feels just too real.
Yeah, it was too real. I mean, the idea is fantastic and believable at the same time somehow. The reaction of the boys to this fantastic thing, to this unbelievable thing, is uncomfortably believable.
Try define your use of fantastic, just in case.
Oh, I don't mean that it's a fantastic idea. I mean, it's fantastic in that it's a unbelievable
fake world of.
I did not mean the fantastic in the positive sense.
Do you feel like this is at all an allegory for anything, or is it?
Of course it is. I think this guy is saying, look, kids are shits, and especially male kids. I have lawyer friends who have said that if you could, it's not a racial thing, the violence in the world. If you could just lock up men from the age of 17 to about 25, we would drop crime 90%. It's not black men, it's all men. Yeah. His thing is, you don't understand. The cases I see is all men in this age range.
Wow.
I mentioned earlier that my dad was a psychologist. One of the things he did for a few years before it got shut down in the early 80s was he ran a home for dangerous boys, dangerous teens. I mean, he ran Boys Town almost.
Oh, my.
And yeah, it's rough. That ain't great.
At one point at school, Ricky and the other kid, not his friend who's started this whole thing, but the other kid that they lit in on the secret, they get cornered by the bullies who beat them up pretty badly. And the other kid then spills the beans and says, we don't need to look at your girls. We've got our own sex slave and all this stuff. And now the bullies are like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Ricky, meanwhile, is going, shut up. He's fucking with you. He doesn't mean anything. Well, these bullies basically kidnap the kids and force them into showing them what's going on at the abandoned hospital. They bring him down to the girl. And now their one friend that Ricky had discovered her with has set himself up on kind of a throne in this room, and he's wearing a weird kind of, it turns into like a Joe Lansdale book, it's so fucking weird. This kid is kind of ruling over this dead girl and allowing his friends to, it's just like this, so fucking unpleasant. And she is also just beat to shit now. Her face is just ruined. And he convinces the bullies who have shown up that, she's into S&M. Why don't you take a go at her? Ricky says, why don't you get her to give you a blowjob? Ricky says this knowing that she tries to bite, and she does bite. We don't see the wound, and we are led to believe that although it must be very painful, it is not a severed organ or anything like that. The next day, the bully who has had his penis bitten starts looking a little worse for wear. And you realize, not only is she not able to die, but she is clearly some kind of zombie thing, and that her bite is transferring something over to this boy. The movie from there gets worse and worse when they realize, now that they can transfer this, well, we've got this beat up old dead girl here, but all we need is for her to bite a new girl and we could have a fresh new dead girl.
Oh my God.
No wonder I would never watch this film again.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so they set off to find themselves a new dead girl. That's about all I'm going to talk about with this movie. Again, I finished it and I was like, this was a really, really well-made movie. And I do remember why I was impressed with it. And I also remember why I was just mortified with it. I also picked this one because I thought there's got to be just a ton of trivia and everything to talk about. And there really isn't. It premiered at TIFF in 2008 and had a really strong film festival run with all the, the Fantastic Film Festival, all that stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that it got distribution. It's also a really well-made movie. It's well shot. The color palette is this really, I don't want to say beautiful, but seductive green. When you get down into the basement, it's a really calming color that you would not think from a zombie film. The extreme stuff, it takes a while to really kick in, but when it does, it is, it's like a train that you can't stop, and most of it is violence against this dead girl. Although there is a wonderful shot with the bully who's been bitten racing to the high school bathroom, where he then loses all of his intestines into the toilet. That was uncomfortable, but also you're kind of like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah.
I was going to say, we're going to have to put one hell of a warning on this episode.
Yeah. So I can't recommend this.
But this film, it sounds like it isn't actually glorifying what they're doing. It's just showcasing it. Is that correct?
It's a very disturbing look at this, but never do you feel like the filmmaker is looking at you going, right? I don't feel like he's doing that. I feel like he's just telling a very disturbing story.
Yeah, because there's just so many versions that are not extreme, but gently fall into this place, like the nice guys. Why can't the nice guys ever get the girl? And I can see that linking into this. And then you also have things like living dolls, where it's like, okay, they're not real, but if you're treating them like they're real, and let's say you beat up a living doll before you have sex with it, what does that say about your idea of sexual, like there's interesting things that it sounds like it's kind of looking at. I don't know if that would be.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem with that is this film operates on a level, and the level is almost like, let's document this thing that happened.
Okay.
But there's going to be a group of men, young men probably, who watch it and aren't watching it on that level, who are watching it on the level of, oh fuck, I wish I could find a dead girl.
Right. The people who like also watch Rick and Morty and come away with a very different message.
I'm glad that you finished it that way, because I was like, wait, I love Rick and Morty.
No, there are plenty of people who like Rick and Morty because it's genuinely good in all kinds of ways, but there are a lot of people out there who like it and think it means something very different than it means.
Shit.
Right.
It's weird. I don't know how they get there, but they get there.
Well, I'll say this: if anybody comes to the table with a extreme horror part 2, I'm going to veto it.
It's tough. I'm right there with you. I feel sick just listening to you guys talk about yours. All three of ours were like super anti-women, not anti, but like beating up women.
I was going to bring that up, that because you had talked about yours being a misogynist film or misogynistic film, but all three of ours were.
Right.
And it's almost like this genre kind of maybe only can go that way.
It's interesting too, because when I was reading the booklet that came with the Criterion version of Antichrist, I did not own it. I borrowed it. Thank you very much. It actually does mention about how horror films have this long-standing, I mean, I never think of it this way, but it is true that a lot of horror films pivot themselves off of that final girl and girls being, pretty heavily abused in one way or another by the monster. But it feels like it's, I don't know, for some reason I excuse it in most movies, because I feel like either the girl wins out at the end or there's something else happening that's more important in the movie. But with these, it seems to be like the pinpoint, at least for the films that we chose.
Yeah, and I could have chose a couple of other films, but I've already spoken about them.
Right.
So, something like I Saw the Devil is an amazing film.
Yeah.
And the gore in it, I do think is part of what makes it amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's also a message there of, the cop is becoming the killer in that movie, and that's it's a really interesting thing. So I'm not trying to say, I know that we've got a lot of fans who like really extreme horror.
Mm-hmm.
It is something that I feel I have watched the best of it, and I've already spoken about it on other genres.
The important distinction I had, which was reality versus storytelling, like when I was a little kid, my mom didn't quite get why I thought The Thing was a lot of fun, but Dirty Harry disturbed the hell out of me. It's like, Dirty Harry's fucking real. That happens. People shoot each other. Those are real things. Well, the Flowers is definitely in a weird fantasy world.
Yeah.
That's a tough one to peg into reality. The artistic person in me who loved seeing Michelangelo's work in person, who loved the chance in Vegas to go and see Van Gogh from like 4 inches away and step back and see it from 15 feet away with nobody in the way, is always intrigued by what people can do with art. And I feel if it's done with art as the main drive behind it, as opposed to I hate people and I want to torture women or whatever, which there are plenty of awful movies that do that.
Right.
I think it's an important distinction. It's not a distinction everybody gets, and it's not a distinction that some people want to accept at all. They'll just dismiss anything as being, this is this, so I don't like it. It's a weird world, and it's a weird, tough time we've got going on right now for films that dare to press buttons that people don't want pressed.
It's definitely interesting too, because film, I mean, it's both an escapism and it's also a kind of hypnotic entering into somebody else's world. Yeah. So I can see the argument both ways. I agree with you, Eric. Like, I am always looking for the good and the interesting and the fascinating and the expanding in whatever it is that I'm watching. Like, how is it making me a better person, or how is it opening my worldview in a way, or how are they opening their own worldviews in a way? But it's interesting because we also have video games, which are, are they escapism, or are they, getting people to live out unspoken fantasies, and you can do these things in those. So it's just a strange thing. And I think hopefully, so long as people don't write notes and go, ooh, 6 women under the floorboards, if I build my house this way, potential, as long as they're not, I think that it is interesting. And I hope that, in some ways you can at least see the brutality and the effects, like the consequences, and see maybe through the consequences that this is a very bad thing. Like, you might become a zombie, or I don't know if the 6 women take revenge on this dude or not, but there's some kind of other side to it. Mm-hmm. Mine, unfortunately, is just that women are evil. So
right. Well, also the other thing I was thinking about was my film came out 12 years ago, which doesn't seem that long ago, but I was still in my 30s then. And I know for a fact that the way I view the world has changed a lot in the last 12 years. And at some point, things that you were okay with, or that bothered you mildly, it might bother you a lot more with a little more life experience. So that could be what happened with me and extreme horror as well.
Yeah, I kind of felt that watching Flowers, going, maybe I'm moving away from this world of investigating what happens with extreme art.
Yeah, I definitely remember when the Asian extreme kind of hit the Western world, and everyone became very interested in it very quickly in the kind of early-ish knots or mid-knots. I remember being obsessed with the idea of the weirdness and the craziness of it. But now when I go back and watch those, I'm way more interested in the mythos and the style. And, it's changed. And I think it's partly the world, and I think it's partly me. Like, there's...
Yeah. Well, one of the films that I thought about doing but didn't revisit is also a fairly famous one, was Martyrs.
Which I have not seen, and I don't know.
I don't want to go there again.
Right.
And I knew I didn't, because it's like, nope.
Okay. Well, hey, Vanessa, why don't you pick us something that doesn't make us feel sick for our next subgenre?
Oh, man. Well, okay. So since we're coming up on Father's Day, my plan is let's do films about fathers. It feels so weird to go from the back of this into that, but whatever, it's cool. Let's go find...
Because horror movies about fathers are always feel-good films of the year, right?
Sure. And they're really positive towards women, always, for sure. So I'm sure they're all going to be good stand-up gentlemen. But yeah, if we could look for films about fathers, let's go ahead and not do Stepfather.
That makes sense. I'd also put out Creep Show. It's Father's Day.
Oh, right,
and definitely not The Shining. I mean, that one's just too obvious, to the point where I'm sure you guys never would have done it anyway. But
right. Yeah. Wow, we're getting done just in time, because it sounds like Loki is winding up.
He is waking up. He's excited. He's looking for his shadow, which is not on the wall. So he's just staring at the wall, singing. Talking.
Speaking of which, this is hopefully our last Zoom episode. We are planning on having a in-person episode next week. So here's a couple of fingers crossed, guys.
So it'd be really good. It'd be really nice.
I've set up a delousing station at the bottom of the steps, so you can walk through. I'll get you guys your hazmat suits and everything. And
you got the giant tube set up already with the air moving through.
Oh, of course.
Awesome. I want the ET experience.
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. Big thanks to everybody who's always playing along with us on the Facebook page and Twitter and all that stuff. Chris Grassi, Ron Forbeck, of course. Joe Sherlock lately has been getting in on the action. Danny Wilford, Jason Weiss. So I really appreciate everybody who interacts with us on Facebook or any of the social stuff. I don't do any of the stuff but Facebook, but I know that Eric is pretty active on Instagram. And Vanessa, I notice, pops in on the Facebook stuff. So
I do. I like to pop in and respond to things on Facebook if I can, and I'm trying to get better at showing up on Twitter more often too.
Got a special thank you for Danny this week. I was talking to him last week, and he's gonna start helping us with something. The list we have of the movies we've talked about that's sort of fallen by the wayside, and the upkeep hasn't been great for the last few episodes. He's going to help us update that.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I'm really happy about that. I was going to say, we're getting to a point now where I am starting to lose track of like, wait, has anyone discussed this? And in such a way that somebody just said that they've seen it versus have they actually gone into a deep dive? So
I sent Eric a text, I think, was it for this episode or last episode?
Yep.
And I was like, have I talked about this movie? He's like, yes, you did. I was like, shit.
So, he'll be helping us do that over the next little while. So,
awesome. Thank you.
Big thanks to Danny. He's such a sweetheart. Okay, guys, that's it for this then. So we're going to have 2 Short Aeons episodes before the next episode, but I believe that's going to be it for the Short Aeons too, because we're coming out of, we're going into phase 2, hard and heavy here.
Yeah.
So we won't have time for all of this. And those of you who are still stuck in phase 1, sucks to be you.
I feel like we're behind everybody else. I think everyone else is out of phase 1.
They're probably like, oh, really? Okay.
You get to see your hairdresser? Fine. I guess that's special. You get to go to inside a restaurant? Losers.
All right, guys. Thanks to you 3 for doing this again. And thanks to all the listeners. And we will see you in 1 short week, live and in person.
Yay.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Our podcast is recorded at Eric's house and Vanessa's house and Kelly's house and is engineered and edited by Eric Morgret. Our theme music is Strange Eons Part 1 by the band Nightshade and is used with permission. Find Strange Eons Radio on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and wherever fine podcasts are found.